First patient that I had, it got ran over by a forklift. It had severed both his legs.
Wow.
And he was bleeding uncontrollably.
We have Doc in the building.
I specialize in bariatric surgery, which is surgery for weight loss.
So how does nutrition work?
You should always be looking at the label. If you're taking in more calories than you're burning in a day, guess what? You're gonna put on weight.
What's the worst, most common thing that most people eat? And so how much shock is too much shock?
Somebody comes in and their hand has been chopped off by a machete. If you lose up to 30-40% of your blood volume, you're in pretty significant shock.
You becoming a surgeon, has that changed your way of life?
When you're a surgeon, you just know how fragile life is. I worked 15 years to get my medical degree. Ain't nobody tell me anything. I decide what I'm gonna do because I have the expertise and I know what's best.
Welcome to another episode of Attractive Mindset. And listen, today's guest is outstanding. I've been waiting to have a conversation like this with this kind of field. Man, he is well known and you're going to get to know him today. I'm going to get to know him today a little bit more. We have Donkor, A.K.A Doc, in the building.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Absolutely, man. So I don't want to spoil it for people, but tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. As you said, everybody knows me as Doc. I am a board certified general surgeon, and I specialize in bariatric surgery, which is surgery for weight loss. I also focus on minimally invasive surgery, which includes robotic and laparoscopy. And I treat a lot of gastrointestinal diseases and disorders.
Wow. That right there, just like, I don't know why it brought a lot of joy to me just now. Like,
appreciate you.
You know, just the ability to have someone across from me that has such a special skill, because it's not every day that you meet a surgeon, for one. And, you know, it's a lot different than just a nurse or something general where you can meet somebody and they're just like, hey, you know, I'm an entrepreneur and I do this or whatever. But man, how long did it take for you to gain that title?
Took a long time. I always, especially when I talk to the kids, I give them what the exact numbers are. I did 4 years of undergraduate. I have a double major in chemistry and biochemistry. And medical school was 4 years. Then I did a surgical residency, which was 5 years.
Wow.
And then on top of that, I did an extra year of training, which is a fellowship that I did at Baptist in Miami with some pretty well-known surgeons down there. And that's where I learned my expertise of minimally invasive surgery.
Wow. So over 15 years.
You're looking about 15 years. Yeah.
Wow. Over 15 years of prepping for that title. So that level of consistency. And so on Attractive Mindset, we like to start off with the backstory, because everybody sees us with like social media and what we do in the present, but they never know how we got to where we are today. And so going way back with you being in such a special field, is this what you always wanted to do?
So I do know that when I was younger, I had written about in, school projects and stuff about being a doctor. Then as I got older, I kind of deviated a little bit. I was really into music, really big into hip hop music. And I was into making music and producing a little bit, but more like, rapping,
Okay. What was your name, your stage name?
Oh boy, we went through a few of them. We went through a few of them, but yeah, they used to. It's funny because back then you really got the name that people gave you, you know. And my first name is Charon, and so I got C and then a dash man, C man,
C-man.
Yeah, and then we had a couple of the names that came after that, but yeah. So I was really into that. I was really into music. But I always was heavy on academics. So no matter what I was doing, whether it was sports, music, I was always still very intense with the books.
And is that something that your parents instilled, or you just wanted to be academically strong?
I have to give that to my mom, who primarily raised me. And I'll talk about that story, but she was just very big into books. And you had to do your work.
Absolutely.
You had to get good grades. You had to be top of the class, and always tried.
Ethnicity?
So my mom is from Trinidad.
Okay. Trinidadian, me too.
Yeah. Oh, Trini?
Yeah.
Okay, boy.
Yeah.
And so, and my my dad is from West Africa,
Okay.
and he's from Ghana. So
Gotcha.
there's a little bit of a mix there.
Okay.
Yeah. What's up, y'all? This is Doc. I'm a board-certified general and bariatric surgeon specializing in weight loss surgery and minimally invasive surgical treatments. You can reach us at www.cares-fl.com. We'd be glad to make an appointment for you. See you then.
No,
Yeah.
that's definitely dope. And so you said Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how different is growing up in Canada versus you being over here in the States?
Oh man, it's a big difference. I mean, um, so so I grew up my younger years in Canada. Went to high school there, college, and then as soon as I finished college, I moved to New York City. Um, but it's very different. The education system is different. I think it's more uniform.
Mm.
So, you know, we were single parent families, so we were able to still get a good public school education. Um, it was just, I think we had just more opportunities, I think. And so I always tell people I'm not sure if I would have reached the same success if I grew up single parent family here.
Mm.
Um, I'm not sure about that.
No, that makes sense. And why New York of all places when you do come here?
So I have family in New York. We had a lot of I had uncles in Queens,
Mm.
and when I went to med school, I was doing a lot of my matriculation, my clinical rotations in New York City.
Mm.
So I was in Harlem, I was in the Bronx, um, I worked in Brooklyn, I was in New York for quite a while before I came down to Miami.
Got it. Okay. And so now you go through high school, you're getting ready to go into college. And at that point, you already knew, like, yeah, I'm going med
So
school.
originally, I didn't even want to go to college.
Oh, wow.
And so when I graduated high school, I remember telling my mom, well, I'm not sure if I really want to do college, if I really want to do university. And she said, if you don't go to school, you're out. You got to
Mm.
get out the house. You're gone. And that's really what pushed me into going into college and pursuing the degree. And then right from there, that's where I just kept going with it.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And so if you didn't go to school, what would you have chosen?
So at that time, I was doing a lot of I liked the entrepreneurial route.
Okay.
And so we were working with a sales company and we were doing, and this is actually during college too, and at the end of college, before I went to med school, but we were doing a lot of like sales, and we would sell anything. There would be about 8 of us in a van, and we'd pull up to one of the big malls, one of the big mall centers there, and jump out the van with things that you could buy and
Mm.
try to sell them. We would go door to door and try to sell electricity, gas, um, charities, whatever the campaign was. We had like 8 or 10 street soldiers. We would just be running through the streets trying to sell and it was hard. It wasn't easy.
Mhm.
You go out there a whole day. Sometimes you wouldn't make anything, and so that kind of flipped me back, saying, you know what, I need to go get further my education more.
Got it. So you started off with entrepreneurial roots, and then you had both of the conundrums of, man, she's gonna kick me out if I don't go here, and this isn't the best. So let me go get my education. Okay.
Yeah, it was just that's why I have a lot of respect for people that decide that they want to go the entrepreneurial route or maybe just make it their own way. Because the path is not decided. You have to kind of decide the path on your own and try to
Literally.
figure it out. It's tough. So I went back to school.
Absolutely. So going back to school is also tough though. Like being able to be consistent in one area field for a long time. And I feel like, because I did part of school as well,
Hmm.
but definitely not as intricate as, the field that you're in. And, you having to study so intricate on those things. What are those kind of tests like for you, knowing that, hey, if I don't learn this information, I'm working on another human being. If something goes wrong, that's it.
So that's a good question. So school is difficult, right? Because when you go to college, you're learning all this stuff, and like, what are you really going to use? Like, what are you using calculus for?
Hmm.
What are you using, organic chemistry for? Unless you're going into the lab or something. When you get to medical school, it's different. Now you're starting to learn stuff that's very interesting. You're learning how to treat diseases. You're learning about all these crazy medical conditions and stuff. But you have to be good at taking tests and you have to be good at focusing. And always, like I tell my kids, it's like, they play basketball. We all play basketball. You got to get up 500 shots, 1,000 shots. It's all reps.
Yeah.
And so with academics, it's similar. You have to study and you have to do practice questions. And I was really good at doing that. I was able to lock in. And also the upfront expense on becoming a physician is so high. So I took out loans for all my education. So I took out loans for my undergraduate. I had loans for medical school. So at that point, when you're going through the process, you're $300,000 in debt.
You can't stop.
You can't stop. You just can't, because if you don't make it through, how are you going to pay that back?
Yeah.
So that was always a motivating factor. I just knew that I had to finish it.
Got it. Okay. And so what is the first instance? Like, I know they don't just, okay, hey, you go to college, you take your test, and then you work on an actual human being. Like, how does that process work of them integrating you into the system of that?
So when you go to medical school, your first 2 years is called basic science, and that's where you learn all the textbook stuff. You learn about the cell, you learn about the muscles, you learn about the anatomy, you learn about pathology, which is the study of the diseases. And then once you finish your basic sciences, you go into what's your clinical rotations. Clinical just means that it's like being in the lab, but you're actually around patients. You're taking care of real patients, and you have doctors that have been doctors for a long time supervising you. And so when you get to that point, that's when you get to actually really see real sick patients. Well, the first time I was in my rotations, I was in the Bronx in New York. The first patient that I had was a guy that was working in a factory in the Bronx, and he got ran over by a forklift. When they brought him in, it had severed both his legs.
Wow.
And he was bleeding uncontrollably. So that was my first patient as a medical student. And
seeing that didn't like mess you up or anything?
Seeing that is actually when I knew that I was going to be a surgeon.
Wow.
Because I wasn't with the surgical team. I was with the medical team. And so the medical team, we came in and, saw this guy. It was a big commotion. They bring him in, and it looked like a scene out of a movie. And I told my attending, which is my supervising physician, I said, let's go. It's an emergency. He said, that's not for us. And then the surgical team came in, and It was like 6 of them. They just came in. They bust through the doors, and they took the guy to the operating room. And he said, we got our patient over here. And the patient had like an asthma attack. Wow. And I was like, oh man, like I want to be I want to go see what they're doing, And so that's when I knew that I wanted to do surgery. But that was my first experience as a student.
Wow. So what was it like? Did you have to like switch into that field, or how did that work?
So at that point is where you start to say you have to get a general broad base of medicine. So you got to be with the kidney docs, you have to be with the heart docs, you have to be with the pediatric team, which is kids, and then you do surgery. And so what I did was I just chose more of my electives in surgery.
Got it.
And surgery was very competitive. And so especially coming over as a foreign graduate, so I had to excel at my testing and all those things to enable to get an opportunity.
Got it. Okay. And so after you do that, you go through that, 15 years pass by. And so what are you doing for work while you're still studying?
So while I'm studying, so it's so heavy that it's very hard to work while you're studying. Now, the first 4 years I told you was college, which I had a job. Then I went to medical school, no job. Then you go into residency. Residency, you get paid.
Okay.
You didn't get paid a lot. My first year as an intern, I made, I think, $29,000.
Wow.
But I was working 80 hours a week.
Wow.
Then my second year, I made 33.
And that's in New York still?
The first 2 years, I actually came down to Miami.
Okay.
I left New York, I came to Miami, and then I went back to New York and I finished. And by the time I finished, I was probably maybe like 55, 60, something like that. But you're working about 100 plus hours a week.
Wow.
Right? So you're not, if you calculate it out by hourly, you're not making that much money. So, but you're making money. You're able to, eat, pay bills, that type of stuff. And then I came down, I did my fellowship back in Miami. and I'm still getting paid minimal amount of money. Once I finished my fellowship and then I got my actual real job, that's when I started making more money.
Okay. And so how is it for surgeons? Once you get the surgeon license and approval, is it almost like a like you open a practice, or how does that work?
So there's two. This is a good question because there's two ways you can do it. What I did and what most doctors do now, as soon as they finish, you go and you get a contract and you work for a hospital. And so you get employed. Okay. And when you get employed, you get a contract, and there's different type of physician contracts, and they put you on a productivity contract, which means the amount of you do, they pay you a salary, and you are responsible for whatever work needs to be done, however, surgeries, seeing patients, all that kind of stuff. If you are more productive than your salary, then they'll give you a bonus on top of that. Okay, so what they do is they'll send, and when I came out, it was like, when I came out of medical school, when I came out of training, I almost felt like an athlete because I was getting all these offers. You know, they were flying me out here, flying me out there. I was young. I didn't know anything. I was in debt. I had owed taxes back in New York, so my bank account was on, was froze. So I was like, give me the first contract. I need to start making some money. The problem with that is when you sign a contract, if you don't have a lawyer review it and you don't understand it, you can get jerked on your contract. And so that happened with me in my first contract.
Wow. And so what's an example of a contract gone wrong?
So, and I don't want to say gone wrong. I think it's not understanding how it works. And you're young and you've got bills and you've got debt. But the issue is that the first contract that I signed, they gave me a base salary. And the salary had a cap, had a bonus and a cap.
Wow.
So once, let's say the initial salary is $200,000, if I do $300,000 of work,
you only get the two.
Well, you only get the two, but they give you a $50,000 bonus. So let's say I walk away with $250,000, but it's not a real bonus because I did $300,000 of work. So all you're doing is you're saying we're going to pay you up to $250,000, and any work that you do over that, we retain it. You're not going to get paid for that.
Wow.
And so when I came out, I was young, I was hungry, I was doing everything. I was operating at 2 a.m, 5 a.m, I was nonstop. And so I was about 100,000 over my cap.
Wow.
And so at the end of the year, when I got my numbers, I was like, oh, it's about to hit. It didn't hit. And so when I went to talk to them, they told me, you didn't look at your contract. This is your cap, and you are not getting paid that money. So I pretty much overworked 100,000, never got the money.
Wow. And how long were you in that contract?
So then they re-up on the contract. So now they look at you and they say, okay, look what you did. You're young. You've got your reputation is building. You're bringing a lot of business. We're going to up your contract. So now they said, well, look, this is what we think, in people your stage. And so they re-upped on the contract where there was an extra 100, 150 for cushion. And then next year I hit it harder.
Wow.
And I went over it again because they had told me that won't happen again. And guess what? I lost another $60,000.
Wow.
Right. And so the third year, they still had to put a limit on it, but we put the ceiling so high. And then I also paced myself where I wasn't just doing so much work at the point where I wasn't getting paid.
Okay. And then you mentioned a second way to do it.
The second way is you go into private practice. And so I'm in private practice now. So I don't work for anybody now.
And how long did it take you to go to private practice?
It took me about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's about 10 years before I went into private practice. And so I tell people, the contract from a hospital is kind of like a 360 deal. If you're talking about if you're talking about rap or even artists, entertainer. And so they really advance you the money. Like they give you a guaranteed salary, but if you don't make that money, they will claw back the difference.
Wow.
Right. And then a lot of your expenses will come out of that contract, out of that money. So when I left Miami and I came to Broward, I signed a contract with HCA, and I was the medical director of the group. And HCA is a big hospital corporation, and I was running a practice of 4 other surgeons, 3 offices, nurse practitioners. I had a whole operation,
Mm.
and we were extremely busy. We were the most efficient revenue stream for them out of all the specialties.
Mm.
And when COVID hit, everybody stopped operating except for emergencies.
Mm.
And so what's interesting, and what the reason why I left it in my contract is something called a reconciliation clause. So reconciliation means that if I don't make the money that they're paying me in my salary, if I don't have the productivity,
Mm.
they can claw that money back.
Mm.
Which never happened to me because I've always been super busy. I'm always the guy that if you call me, I say yes. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if I'm with my family, if I'm out playing ball. If you call me for something, I'm gonna go do it.
Got it.
And of course, I had a pretty big reputation. People would say, "Oh, he's good. Call him." And so when COVID hit, we weren't as busy because we weren't doing elective procedures.
Yeah.
Everybody's productivity went down, and so they
Mm.
actually clawed back quite a bit of money.
Wow.
And they just were out of your paycheck. They were just take the money back.
Wow.
And at that point, I said, it's time for me to leave and do my own thing because all the risk is on me anyways.
Yeah.
And so so you have to be careful, like for young physicians, young doctors out there, understanding how contracts work and understanding how to review it. Even I had a lawyer review the second contract. He didn't even pick it up.
Wow.
So because when we never had a situation like COVID before,
Mm-hmm.
but that company actually has, notwithstanding global emergencies or disasters.
Wow.
So they already had something written into the
Set up.
contract.
Got it.
Who would have thought about that?
Yeah. No, that's major. And
So that's the third time I lost money off of not understanding how contracts work.
So in your experience of doing that, would you say, even though it may not have been as beneficial up front, you preferred going through that then opening your practice, or would you have rather you opened your practice out the gate?
I think it was still beneficial because to open up a practice just out the gate without anybody knowing who you are, you still have to have business. You still got to bring money in.
Mm.
It would have been very difficult. When I left, I already had a big name, a big reputation. So I already had many patients that were following me. I had a lot of doctors that refer to me. And so once I left and opened up my own shop, I was busy from day one.
Mm. And so, okay, that's like the interesting back end part of it to me. How is it set up in a system where they already have you salaried? Like when you get referrals from people, like how does a referral work per se?
Okay, so for example, let's say you have an issue, you're having pain every time you eat, and your primary doctor finds out that your gallbladder has an issue.
Mm.
Well, you need to see a surgeon because he's not going to take it out. He's not a surgeon.
Mm.
So then he will refer you to a surgeon that he wants his patient to go to because he feels that it's going to be a good outcome.
Mm.
So that doctor will refer to me. That patient will call my office and schedule an appointment with me.
Mm.
When I see that patient, I work him up. I take a look at the imaging, do my history and physical. And if I feel that it's necessary for him to have surgery, I'll book him for surgery. And so that's probably like 80% of my practice. I can also get work by being on call for the hospital.
Mm.
So emergency room,
Yeah.
right? So let's say we're here, we're doing the podcast, and all of a sudden you have really bad pain in your right lower quadrant. And it just gets worse and worse. I say, go to the ER. So you drive to the closest ER.
Mm.
You have appendicitis. There's some surgeon who's sitting there waiting. And anybody that comes in as an emergency goes to him.
Got it.
So that's how I supported myself in the beginning of my career.
Mm.
As I got older and I got more of a name of a practice, I don't really take a lot of ER call anymore because my office is full of patients that have been referred to me.
Got it.
Right. And so I actually hired 2 surgeons. So now I have my practice. So I own the practice. It's my practice, but I have 2 doctors that work for me and now are my partners.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have, employees and stuff. And so they're at the beginning stage because they're younger.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do is teach them how to build a practice, go out, meet people, always be available, answer your phone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you don't have to sit in the emergency room waiting for someone to walk through the door.
No, absolutely.
If you're depending on the hospital for business, they can cut you anytime.
Anytime.
Right?
Yeah.
My practice might be if I shut down my office today and I move it, to Miami or 50 miles down the road, people are still going to find me. And that's what happened when I left and I went into private practice.
Got it. And so Are there different rules for practices depending on what state you're in?
There is, but they're pretty much the same. The biggest thing that we have to deal with is insurance companies.
Okay.
Insurance companies are very hard to deal with because they deny payments, they deny authorizations. They just make it real difficult for doctors to be doctors.
And so I was going to touch on that too. With insurance companies, do you ever, what's the scenario? Because I'm more of a like community activist kind of
Hmm.
guy. And
Hmm.
so when you have people come in there that seriously need help, but their insurance isn't, allowing it, how does that work out?
So people have a misconception. So if you have no insurance
Mm,
and you come to the emergency room and you've got a ruptured colon, nobody, you cannot turn that person away.
mm,
Okay. They call a surgeon, somebody like myself. You come in, I do the surgery, boom, boom, boom. You do good, you go home. Then you get a bill,
mm.
right? Because you don't have insurance.
Yeah.
You don't, most people don't pay that bill because they can't afford to pay it,
Mm,
right? So there is going to be there's nowhere where you're going to go that, and I'm saying for the most part, because obviously there's always, little things here and there, but for the most part, you can't refuse a patient treatment because they don't have insurance.
got it.
Now, the problem with what happens in this country, right, because not everybody has insurance,
Mm,
is let's say you get a diagnosis of cancer, or something's going on, you don't have insurance. It's not an emergency where you have to run to the hospital,
mm,
but you're at home, you won't see a doctor because you don't have insurance, or you can't get an MRI because you can't afford it, and you don't have insurance to cover it. And that's where we see a really big problem where, patients are not getting treated because things are happening that they can't control because they don't have the insurance to go follow up on it.
mm.
But as far as emergencies, like when I was in New York, I did a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
So a guy comes in with a gunshot wound, a stab wound, all that kind of stuff. They come in when they haven't, nobody even checks it. I mean, I'm sure the administration people check, but as a
Yeah.
physician, I've never asked a patient whether they have
You just
insurance
go
or not.
straight for the treatment.
No, I could do what you got to do.
Mm. Okay. So now we get into the meat and potatoes
Hmm.
of the conversation, the actual surgeries, I don't even know where I want to start on this. You becoming a surgeon, has that changed your way of life?
Yeah, yeah, of course. When you're a surgeon, you just know how fragile life is,
Mm,
and you just know that anything, you know, can alter your life or end your life, right? Especially when I was doing when I was doing a lot of trauma. I mean, when I was doing a lot of trauma, I mean, you see so many things that are you have nightmares about.
mm.
You know, gunshot wounds, people falling from a construction site and landing on a rebar.
Wow.
All that kind of stuff. I've even had people with a shark still attached to them that I've had to remove off of them.
Wow.
So, and then of course, you deal with the other side, which is a lot of stuff I deal with now, which is like breast cancer, colon cancer, that type of stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, you see all that type of stuff.
And then what about like from a holistic or like a health standpoint?
Well, I do. So I specialize in bariatric surgery, which is surgery for weight loss. But I
Mm,
don't just do surgery. I treat people with medications. I put them on special diets. I encourage them to exercise. So that's a holistic approach because you don't want to just operate on someone right away. You don't want to just give them medications. You
mm,
try to treat them holistically, help them get in tune with their body, help them understand how nutrition. A lot of people don't understand how nutrition works.
mm. So
And
how does nutrition work?
I tell people there's different ways, are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to build muscle? Are you trying to maintain? The first thing I tell my patients, you should always be looking at the label when we're about to eat something.
Mm,
That's that's a major key. Because then you can see, well, how many calories are you taking in?
mhm.
Numbers in versus numbers out. If you're taking in more calories than you're burning in a day, guess what? You're going to put on weight.
What's the worst, most common thing that most people eat?
Sugar,
Mm.
sodas.
And so you don't eat sugar or sodas?
I eat a lot of sugar. I love sugar, but I know like what I try to do is I try to offset it with exercising. But
Mm,
sugar it's carbohydrates, right? Or it's just pure sweets, like if you eat a candy bar
mm.
or drink a Coca-Cola or a Mountain Dew. But sugar is really one of our biggest problems.
And what about what, a lot of other people say, like these chips are killing you, McDonald's is killing you, all of that stuff from like the inside.
I mean, that stuff is not good for you. A lot of this stuff is probably carcinogenic also, meaning that, probably stimulating or forming cancer also, right?
Mm,
Um, I think everything has to be done in moderation.
mm.
So you can eat McDonald's if I wouldn't recommend it, but
Do
you
you eat
know,
fast food?
I try not to eat fast food.
Mm.
Sometimes if I'm working late and I've been operating all day long, there's nothing else open.
Yeah.
It's not like New York where I could get food at any time
Yeah.
of the day or the night. So I really try not to eat fast food, but there's a lot of food that we eat. Like maybe you're not eating fast food, but you're eating food that's heavy in carbohydrates, high in cholesterol, or maybe you're just eating too much. Maybe your portions are too much. A
Mm,
lot of people don't understand about portion control. You should be eating, 4 to 6 small meals a day,
mm.
right?
And is there a time frame that you should stop eating?
You shouldn't eat. I tell my patients who are really probably dealing with weight issues not to eat after 6 or 7 o'clock p.m. And then I also tell people to do intermittent fasting, which would be, maybe having a small window during the day where you eat. Like, let's say you eat from 12 till 8 p.m. That's only 8 hours, or 10 till 6.
Mm.
And then the rest of the time you're fasting. And so that's how I maintain my weight. I do a lot of intermittent fasting because a lot of times I'll be working many hours and then I'll end up eating whatever's available to me.
Got it. Okay. And so I've watched a lot of things with Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Okay.
and he brings up a lot of cases where, on the science side of the house, he's like, well, this shouldn't be possible, but you have people that have grown back like organs and everything like that. Have you ever been in a scenario where somebody's surgery went way better because their body did something that it normally shouldn't do?
I'll tell you this, if you are healthy, your outcome of surgery is always going to be better.
Mm,
People don't understand when they are not healthy, they're overweight, they smoke, it just makes everything a lot worse for outcomes,
mm,
right? So as far as like an organ growing back, there's certain organs that regenerate, like the liver,
mm.
right? But the body's not really magical. I mean, it's based on science, and if you don't treat your body well, it's not going to perform well.
Mm. Okay. And what about if, from a mindset perspective, people thinking certain scenarios into existence, both bad and good?
So I think that if you're talking about having a positive mindset, positive attitude,
Hmm.
I think it helps your immune system, and I think it helps you get through things, and I think it will obviously help you for getting through a difficult surgery or a difficult time when it comes to like a medical issue.
Hmm.
Um, but I always try to tell patients that you know there's certain things we can't explain, but there's a lot of things that we do know, and most things that we do know, if you do the main things like eat healthy, drink enough water, exercise and not stay sedentary, don't smoke. Obviously, alcohol is not good for you. If you try to stay away from those things, those will be the best things for you.
Got it. Okay. And so now going into the actual surgeries,
Hmm.
you know, have you ever been presented with something that you just didn't learn in a book or in training?
Yeah. So the amazing thing about the human body is so much variation.
Mm,
So I teach now. I mean, in addition to still doing my practice, but I teach, and I tell the students and the residents, it never looks like it is in a textbook.
mm,
You get in there, you have to be ready to counter. You always have to have a counter available, right? You always have to be ready for something that's not exactly the way you studied it.
mm,
So all the time, I think more often than not, when you get in there, it's like, wow, what's going on, right? But you understand human biology, you understand anatomy, and
mm.
you understand what the disease process is. You get through it, and you do what you need to do.
Got it. And so a scenario, if
Hmm.
somebody comes in there and like their hand is literally about to fall off, it's
Hmm.
just hanging on, how do you approach that situation?
So we have basic rules or basic protocols, right? So if somebody comes in and their hand has been chopped off by a machete and it's hanging by a string, they've probably been bleeding and they're probably possibly going into shock. So the first thing, and this is for anybody that maybe you're in the field, maybe you're on vacation, maybe you're somewhere, trekking in the Amazon, but it's ABC, airway, breathing, circulation. The first thing, you have to make sure the airway, they're breathing okay. Okay. And the airway is protected. If it's not protected, then you have to put a tube in to make sure that they can breathe or clear whatever is out of their mouth. Breathing is make sure you're hearing breath sounds and you're making sure they're able to oxygenate. And then circulation is your blood pressure. Maybe this guy has lost a lot of blood, and now the first thing you have to do is try to stop the bleeding. So that's your first way of approaching somebody with that in that type of situation. And you learn that when you do trauma.
Yeah, they told us in the military, tourniquet.
Tourniquet, exactly. So you have to be careful because it depends on where and how you put the tourniquet, how long do you have the tourniquet on. I remember I was doing a case, so I was in Brooklyn, and I was in Brooklyn, and a young kid had gotten shot about 6 or 8 times, and so they brought him in, and as they brought him in, he lost his pulses, so his blood pressure completely flatlined. And so I was a surgeon on call, and when they rolled him back to me, I had a choice: pronounce him or work on him. And young kid, a lot of these kids, I would see them, and I was young too, so they look like me.
Wow.
And so I was always work on him. So let's go. And so the issue with him is he was bleeding and he was losing a lot of blood volume, so he was in shock. So because he was a penetrating wound, which was to the chest area and all over, we opened up his chest. I opened up his chest and I exposed his heart. It's called a thoracotomy. And I was actually squeezing his heart to keep it pumping until we were able to get blood, and all the things that we need to keep him alive and get him to the operating room.
Wow. And he pulled through.
No, he didn't. But we got him to the operating room. So most people die, immediately, or by the time they get to the hospital. We actually got his pulse back. We got him into the operating room. We operated on him, but his body had gone into so much shock, it was irreversible, and he died later. Yeah.
And so how much shock is too much shock?
That's a good question. So everybody's different, right? So if you have a young, healthy person, they can handle a lot. Somebody who's not healthy, somebody who's older, somebody who smokes, drinks, it takes less for them to not be able to bounce back. But we talk about like how much blood loss, right? So if you lose 10% of your blood volume, then you're like grade 1, like stage 1 shock. If you lose up to 30-40% of your blood volume, you're in pretty significant shock. And now your heart is pumping really fast. Your blood pressure is really thready and light because you don't have enough blood in your blood vessels. And it's a matter of time, if the bleeding is not stopped, that you'll die.
Wow. And how long does it typically take for like these kind of surgeries? Like what's an estimated time for most general surgeries?
So it depends on the type of surgery. So if I'm taking out your gallbladder, I can take out your gallbladder in 15 minutes. It varies. Sometimes they're more complex. Sometimes it's easier. Different surgeons work at different pace. I typically am pretty quick and efficient with great outcomes, but it's variable. If you're doing something like a colon surgery or something, it may take longer. I've operated for 12 hours straight before.
Wow.
And I've had attendings when I was a student operate for 22 hours straight. I had a attending who did a liver transplant for 22 hours.
Wow.
And within the middle of the case, he started having heart palpitations. He had a heart attack.
Wow.
Finished the surgery and then got admitted to the cardiology floor and had a cardiac cath.
Wow.
He was a monster.
Wow. And when you're dealing with things like this, do you ever get emotional?
Oh yeah. Of course you get emotional. I mean, of course, you're dealing with life and death. Many times, unfortunately, many times you do everything you can for the patient, but you can't. It's too far gone. Patients with breast cancer that they were scared to go to the doctor, and by the time you see them, it's spread everywhere, and they only got a few months left. Kids with cancer is very sad. All this. That's a lot of it.
Okay, and so the next part of that question would be, what kind of mental recalibration do you go through to be able to deal with this on a constant basis?
I think what I have to do is just be thankful for family, health, right? A lot of exercising, a lot of trying to be around good people and just try to hear like positive things. A lot of negative stuff out there,
Yeah.
especially like on Instagram and all this stuff. So I try to stay in the positive realm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And how do you feel is, our community, when I say our community, I mean like the black community versus like Latinos, Asian, white community,
Mhm.
like what are the difference in surgeries when you do work on these different demographics?
So physiologically, anatomically, there's not much difference.
Hmm.
We're all the same.
Hmm.
Okay. Unfortunately, it's not the same for everybody in this country, right?
Hmm.
Because people get treated differently. We have a lot of problems with healthcare, especially in the black community.
Hmm.
As physicians, we make up, I think, you can check the numbers, but probably about 5 to 6% of medical doctors are black,
Wow.
right? And so if you take somewhere like Broward County, where I think the black population is like I think 14 to 17%, we're underrepresented. We have underrepresentation in that area.
Hmm.
It matters because black patients have um, worse outcomes when it comes to getting treated for certain things. And that is even if you account for, socioeconomic status, obesity, diabetes, all that stuff. So really, there's a lot of issues when it comes to racism in medicine,
Wow.
right? Treating your pain. Black women are at risk just for the fact that they're black, when they're giving birth. So I see that. I don't see as much of it here, but it still exists.
Hmm.
And I saw that when I was in Miami also, much more.
Hmm. And
Hmm.
so what made you go from Miami to Broward?
Um, I left Miami because number one, I live in Broward. I
Hmm.
did live in Miami, but we moved out of Miami, and it was just that I was driving a lot. It was a lot of hustle and bustle, and I just felt Broward would be a better fit for me, which it was.
Okay. And at what point in all of this did you find time? Because you were talking about 100-hour weeks and
Hmm.
everything. What point during your journey did you meet like your significant other, have kids, all of that?
So I met my wife during medical school,
Mm,
and she was a nurse. I was a medical student.
mm,
And then I left. I went back to New York, and then we stayed in contact. And then I came back, and then I actually moved back down here to Miami, or I came to Miami, and then I brought her and the kids back to New York.
mm,
And then she left and came back down here because she didn't like New York City. I
mm.
stayed in New York, and then I came back, and then eventually came back to Miami and settled down.
Got it.
So, but I did that all throughout my residency and my medical school training. So it wasn't easy because I didn't have much time,
Mhm.
but I had to stay focused because if I didn't finish that degree, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now.
Got it. And so, in a difference from like a entrepreneur
Hmm.
where you can set like an exit goal, what would be an exit goal for you?
Oh, that's a good question. An exit. So I don't think I'd ever want to stop practicing medicine, but an exit goal for me would be now that I have a big vibrant practice that is growing and have some younger doctors under me, is to get them busier and get their practices really blossoming, and hopefully be able to like operate less and be able to teach more and do
Mhm.
other things. So my exit goal would be is when the group is actually, because I'm very busy, but my guys are as busy as I am. I think
Got
that
it.
would be my exit goal.
Okay. And so now that you have your own practice, what are your hours like? Like, what's a daily routine for you or week?
Okay, so daily routine is like say for example, like a Tuesday is my block surgery day. That means I have scheduled cases from 7 in the morning till the evening time. And I'll do maybe 5 to 8 cases or
Mm,
5 to 7 cases that are scheduled. Maybe somebody has a hernia, maybe somebody I'm doing a gastric bypass to lose weight. Maybe I have somebody with breast cancer or somebody with colon cancer and I'm doing a colectomy, but
mm,
a variety of that type of stuff. In between, I'm managing the practice, which is a lot of business stuff. I also own the building that I operate out of, and I have tenants in there. I have a dialysis company in there, and then I have 4 or 5 employees in addition to 2 other surgeons. Um, And then I also teach with the residents. So I have
Mm.
residents with me and students that have to take time and teach and bring them and take them through the surgeries also. And then I do other business ventures and stuff. So I'm always busy. So every day there's always something new. Um, I also get a lot of calls for like private referrals. Like, let's say there's somebody who may be the CEO of a hospital or something like that. They may call me directly, say, "Hey, are you available? Can you do this surgery? You know, he's got appendicitis, or, you know, somebody has this type of thing going on. Are you available?" And I very rarely say no. I usually say yes, and that'll usually throw a monkey wrench in the whole schedule, but we get it done.
Got it.
Mhm.
Okay. And so now I want to shift it over from trauma to more things that aren't as easy to see. So you mentioned diseases. And so when you're working on somebody with a different level of diseases, how I don't even know where to start with that. Like there's so many different variations and
Mhm.
like uh different spawn offs of different
Mhm.
stuff. And
Mhm.
so when somebody comes in, how do you treat that process?
So when the person comes in, let's say I've never met the person before, they come in and they say, "Doc, he's got abdominal pain."
Mm.
The first thing I do is I go and I interview the patient and I look at them holistically. I feel their belly. I ask them questions. I look at their palms. I look at their eyes. I just get a general idea of, like, you know, does this person have something going on?
Mm.
Is this something you can tell? You know, has he lost a lot of weight? Do they look yellow? Is the skin very flaky?
Mm.
And then from there, I start to direct what my workup would be, which would be maybe some testing like an ultrasound. I look at the blood work, and then I get more detailed into what brought them into the hospital. From there, once I have all that information, I usually can develop a plan, an assessment first, and this is what I think is going on, and then a plan to treat that.
Mm.
What's important in medicine is called a differential diagnosis. So you come in, let's say you have appendicitis. I don't know that yet, but I have a differential. You could have appendicitis. You could have diverticulitis. You could just be constipated,
Mm.
right? Or you could have gastritis. And I have those lists of diagnoses, and then I drill in and I figure out what it is.
Mm. And so when you explain it like that, it seems a lot more, believable than when people use the phrase of, well, they're going to just tell you you have something because Big Farm wants you to take medicine and keep
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah. I hear that all the time. I listen. I'm a surgeon, so I don't really prescribe a lot of medications,
Mm.
right? I actually went into surgery because I like to fix the problem immediately. You come in and your appendix blew up and you're gonna die. I'm gonna take out your appendix. I'm gonna wash you out. You're gonna be good,
Mm.
right? You got a tumor in your colon. If the colon is like a pipe, right? It's like plumbing,
Mm.
and if a tumor gets in there and blocks it, and you don't do anything about it, it's gonna back up, and
Mm.
you're gonna blow it out, and then you get peritonitis, and you will die,
Mm.
right? So if you come to me with that, I take it out, I put you back together, you go home,
Mm.
right? So I don't really prescribe a lot of medications, but I can say it's not likely that there's always incentive, and you know, we are a highly medicated, you know, community and country, right?
Mm.
Um, but I couldn't imagine anybody, a big pharma or anybody telling me, "Hey, you need to do this, you need to do that." I worked
Got it.
15 years to get my medical degree. Ain't nobody telling me anything. I decide what I'm going to do because I have the expertise and I
Mm.
know what's best. You need research, you need pharmaceuticals, you need all of that, right?
Mm.
Because that's how we advance, and it is science, right? So,
Mm.
but yeah, that's my thought on that.
Got it. And you saying that, there's a scenario out there that I want people to also understand
Mhm.
that, I was approached at one point because when we were getting this building, it was between this and like a bigger building, like a 5,000 square foot building.
Mhm.
But the caveat to the 5,000, this one is 1,800 square feet. To the 5,000 was someone was going to get it for us and we would have complete control over it, everything, the same. But that person was Pfizer.
Mhm.
And all they wanted was recognition in a strong Black neighborhood presence.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where I'm kind of like a
Mhm. Mhm.
conspiracy
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
guy a
yeah,
little bit, and
yeah.
so it's like one of those things where it's like, hmm, you have these people that want to advertise to our communities
Mhm.
with something that is already not tested, and want you to get like your vaccine and stuff. And now there's a lot of kickback with the vaccine and everything. But before, you had people like Dr. Fauci, like, hey, you need to take this, and they were
Mm-mm.
making mandates. You got
Mhm.
to do
Yeah,
this
yeah,
to get
yeah.
on this and do all of that stuff. And now it's like, oh, well, people actually got worse from this, and they're dealing with a lot more ailments now. How do you approach that?
Okay, so I'll tell you. So number one, so it's the difficulty with that whole scenario was that telling people you need to do this, you need to do that, right? People don't like to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, but I always tell people science is science, right? So I don't, I'm not going to come in here and look at all the cameras and all the, like that. He pressed that button. I don't even know what that was, right? So I have to trust that he knows, y'all know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, if I take my car to the mechanic, you have to trust at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
At some level. So I think what happened there was people didn't have trust. Now, are people having more ailments from the vaccines now than the actual COVID?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not.
Mm.
Because I was the guy in the hospital when people had COVID and they couldn't breathe. I'm the one who had to cut the neck open and put a tube in there to help them breathe.
Mm.
So I saw that stuff firsthand, right? So I knew it was real. Now, did the vaccines work great? I mean, I'm not an immunologist, so I think I don't think they were as great as they wanted them to be. But I don't think there's any conspiracy with vaccines. We've been taking vaccines since,
A long time.
right,
Yeah.
for a long time.
Mm.
And people are not complaining about polio. People are not complaining about smallpox, right?
Mm-hmm.
If smallpox was here or polio was here, they'd be saying there's a conspiracy as to why there's polio and smallpox.
And
But
so
but a vaccine is the reason why they're not here.
I feel like one of the major differences in like something like
Mm.
that though is something like this
Mm.
is completely funded and pushed by somebody who's not even in the medical field, aka Bill Gates.
Mm.
And when he is taking majority of control of pushing these things out and mandating it,
Mhm.
even getting on a TED talk and talking about it and saying, hey, we have to bring the population from here to here and get rid of people, that kind of brings up some concern.
Listen. Of course, there's going to be concern. I'm not really for all the. You've been vaccinated.
Mm.
I've been vaccinated. You got vaccinated as a kid,
Yeah.
right? So it's the science is there.
Mm.
Now, I'll tell you what people had a problem with is the fact that the vaccine for the COVID happened so quickly,
Mm-hmm.
right? People are, how could you bring out a vaccine so fast? It hasn't been tested, it hasn't been this, hasn't been that. But all I can do as a physician is say, well, what they have given us as the information on how they did it, followed the scientific protocol, and the scientists, it wasn't that it was done without enough testing. They just did it at a quicker pace than usual because there's never, they don't have an emergency situation where they say, hey, we need to get that out,
Mm-hmm.
right? But again, I don't think you should force anybody to take a vaccine,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they don't want to take it, they don't want to take it. Problem is that in certain diseases, right, if you don't take the vaccine, you affect everybody around you also,
Yeah.
right? And so, yes, as a young, healthy person, you can say, I don't want to take the vaccine. But if you notice, people that lived around people that were compromised, maybe had cancer, maybe are going through chemotherapy, they're very careful with it because they already know. Like you see people wearing masks that have lost their hair, they're on chemotherapy because they already know their immune system is depressed. It takes one pneumonia, one bad flu, one bad virus for them to just not be able to recover.
Yeah.
So I think we have to it's not always like about an individual, like I don't want to do this. Well, okay, so should you be able to drive drunk and speed because it's your body and you're right? No, you're going to smash somebody and kill somebody, right? When I was doing a lot of trauma, it was never the drunk driver that got killed. It was always the innocent family or the innocent person walking across the street that got killed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to we all live here together. We do have to have a little bit of, hey, we're in a community. We try to protect our community. Now, as far as Pfizer wanting to align and put itself with a Black business and have a good, they've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
Right? Nike does it. Pharmaceutical companies do it. So the question is, what are they really doing for our community?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we can hold all of them accountable for that. We can ask them, well, what programs have you put in the Black community? How many scholarships have you sponsored for young Black physicians? Oh, well, if one of the biggest things was affirmative action, right? And now they say it's unconstitutional. Well, it's interesting because the number of Black admissions into Ivy League schools has dropped significantly, right? So then, of course, people say, oh, well, it means they're not qualified. No, that's not true. We have a lot of qualified. We just don't get the access and we don't get the exposure and they don't look for us. So I have a business and I've hired, if you come to my business, I have a whole variety of people that are all skilled, of different cultural backgrounds. Mm-hmm. It's not hard. It's not hard to do it. But consistently, they haven't hired us and we haven't been represented. I'm a business owner now. I pay the people, I pay salaries 20%, 25% above fair market value because I know I want good people and I want them to stand. I want them to feel compensated well, and I want them to be happy, and I want them to be able to do things. So if I can do it and I'm a small business, it comes right out of my pocket, big business can do it. It's not hard. It's not going to kill the economy if you pay people a livable wage for minimum wage, if you pay people for what they deserve.
And so with you doing it from that kind of standpoint where you're a business, but you're also on like they have like the W-2 structure to it. How does taxes affect you?
I mean, taxes is tough. I pay taxes, right? I pay taxes because I have income, and I pay employer insurance tax.
Yeah.
I give benefits, full benefits. I pay their healthcare. We get bonuses. I do all that stuff, and I'm the single owner. But I sleep well at night, right? My staff has been with me; they haven't left, and I know they're doing well, and I know they're actually advancing, and it's a good position for them to have.
No, absolutely. And so, that even talking about that, how did you get to those means? Because you being able to go from working hundreds of hours at the actual hospital, I'm sure you didn't just save up $1 million and like, hey, I'm going to go buy a building, open this up, whatever. What's the process you had to go through to successfully open that up and get to where you are right now?
It was tough because I quit my job. I bought that building and I brought one employee with me all at the same time. Right? While having a family, having to provide and all that type of stuff. And then I had to learn the business because I was a physician. I'm not a businessman, right?
Yeah.
And so the first 6 months was difficult because no money was coming in. I was working off of savings, but I still have to pay my employee, right? And we didn't understand the business well, right? So we lost a lot of money. We had a situation where the credit card machine was not set up correctly from the bank that set it up. And so for 6 months, we're collecting payments on patients that I operated on, did surgery on, treated their cancer. None of the payments went through.
Wow.
Right? Patients all knew that the payments didn't go through.
Wow.
There was only one patient out of hundreds that actually called and said, hey, you keep running my credit card, but it's never coming out of my account. And so it was at that point where my manager, she actually went and found and actually realized and saw that none of the payments had gone through for 6 months, which is tens of thousands of dollars. And so now we're like, wow, we just lost all that.
And so what do you do in that kind of scenario?
Oh, it was crazy. So now we have to try to call the patient backs, say, hey, can we charge you again? And never charge. And, I know I watch my credit cards on a daily. So I know if I go to a store and I just know if it's going to be charged or not, or if it got charged or not. But now you have to go and you have to ask, you have to tell people and you have to say, hey, can we charge you again? Because it never hit. But anyways, my point is a lot of growing pains with the business and learning how to do the business, because in medicine, we work off of insurance, right? So if you have insurance, then we bill the insurance and the insurance pays us. Well, the amount of times that insurance just refuses to pay is, you wouldn't believe it, right? So I do a surgery on you, you have good coverage, we bill your insurance for the procedure we did on you, and the insurance says we're not paying.
And so,
And then they say, get it from the patient.
is the patient liable for it after
So
that?
the patient's responsible, right? But the service has already been done. I've done the surgery, and now I have to call you and say, you have a bill. And you say, I don't have a balance. I have insurance. Well, the insurance is not paying it. Oh, that's not, And so now you go and you say, well, I have insurance. I'm not paying. And so that puts all the pressure back on the physician, right? And so that's not only that. Number two is maybe you need an MRI, and I want an MRI for you because I think you have a cancer in your leg. Like I have a patient right now. The insurance won't authorize it, right? So there's a reviewer there saying, we don't think that's important. If that turns out to be cancer, that's going to affect the patient very negatively, very badly, right? And so that's why I think with insurances, physicians and the general population are not they're not favorable of the insurance companies because that's the type of stuff that they do.
Got it. And have you worked with a lot of like veterans?
Yeah, of course. I love the veterans.
And so they have like the VA hospital for us, which I'm grateful for, but I feel like through the VA hospital, it's become more of like I don't even know how to explain it. It's become more of we just want to process you through.
Yeah, they just process you. So so I'm not part of the VA system, but I've had veterans that have come to me because they need a specific specialized type of surgery, and they want to come see me. They don't want to follow up with their doctors. And so the general concern that they have is they're not getting seen soon enough. They're not getting any answers. Nobody's calling them. Nobody's following up. And so that's what we provide. We provide, that quality care where they know that they can call the doctor. He's going to answer. He's going to give them the information that they want. They just feel like they're taken care of.
And so if veterans were to go towards you, because we have a very big veteran base following, if veterans were to go towards you, it just goes to the VA insurance? Like, how does that process
So I think
work?
it's very difficult because I had a particular patient that was sick. He had gone to, and the VAs, I know they have great doctors there, but in this particular case, he had gone to see some doctors and they kept dismissing him. And so when he got to me, he was very sick. And so I planned to operate on him because I said, you need to have surgery right away. And the VA kept trying to get him transferred back to the VA hospital because they wanted him to get back to the VA. But he didn't want to go because he said, every time I go there, they won't operate on me.
Wow.
And so I think he had to appeal, and finally I was able to operate on him and he did well. But I had another case where by the time I got there in the morning, they had already shipped him back out.
Wow.
And I know there's some great physicians at the VA. I think that system may be overloaded or whatever it is.
It's definitely overloaded because I'm 90%. And so I've been on, multiple deployments, and
wow.
It's,
thank you for your service.
Thank you. And me being 90%, there's still a lot of areas with my body now versus from before I started the Marine Corps till after, where I'm like, it's just not the same. And I go there and there are some good doctors. There's some great ones, but the majority of people I deal with, the entire process makes me not want to go back.
Yeah.
And it makes me not want to push for some of the other things because it feels like a process. Like it feels like I don't want to go to you for help.
It feels like you're just a number.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. I've had a lot of patients say that. So the only thing I can do is if I have any patient that ends up in my office, I try to give them my undivided attention and just give them 100% care. So they know that, okay, Doc he's got my back.
And so I said most of all of that to say, there's one category that hasn't been touched on yet from the VA from me, where when you're deployed, I forget the exact nomenclature for it, but it's basically like toxins.
Oh.
And so I definitely dealt with toxins over there.
Where were you?
In Bahrain and Kuwait.
Oh.
And
okay.
so when we came back over here, there's like a whole sheet that you're supposed to sign up for. Like if you deploy to these areas, you were exposed to
Mm-hmm.
radiation,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
toxin, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And there's like something with my nose now
Mm-hmm.
where it's always stuffed, but I don't have like mucus,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
But like I don't know,
Yeah,
it's this
yeah,
weird back and forth.
yeah.
And I address it to them constantly, but it's like
They don't have an answer for you.
no, nothing.
Yeah.
They've never changed it.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem also is that they may be lacking the specialist that you need to see. And sometimes it's better to go out of the system so you can get a different perspective. I've definitely seen that, right?
Okay.
Because there's a lot of toxins that they used that it's even took them years to figure out what the heck the toxin was, right? So you need a specialist that can really like look into it, look up through your nose, look down your throat, do imaging, and actually look at it and see.
Got it.
And sometimes you don't find anything. Sometimes there's something going on, but it's so embedded within you just can't find it.
Yeah, no, I mean that's they didn't even try to the biggest part of where most of that percent comes from is my skin. And so I was a tank crewman. We worked on the tank, and tank has a bunch of oils and gas and all that stuff, and it exploded on under I was under the tank, and cranked the bolt to try and tighten it, and I don't know, the driver at the time like revved it or something, and it exploded, and it got all over my skin, and I sat in Cali desert weather for like 2 days with the stuff just soaking up into my skin. And so now my skin is like two-tone everywhere on here. And so with it like that, they automatically, like every time I went in there, they're just like 60% off rip, which is one of the highest that they've ever done for that amount for your skin. But it wasn't like a, hey, we're gonna fix this for you. It was just
let's try to solve this for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like they gave me like the topical cream stuff at first. They gave me the pill stuff at first, and I just felt like a lab rat almost. And so
I can see where you would feel like that. Yeah. And I that's why like in my practice, I hate for people to feel like that, because my mom went through she was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago. And so we had to go through all that, going back and forth to different doctors. Sometimes you show up in the doctor's office, they don't even talk to you, or they don't really pay attention. They don't, they just already know what they're going to do with you, and they're just there to check the box, and that's it. But not all doctors are like that. Yeah.
No, that's comforting. Just I've never had a conversation with somebody on the higher side of a medical field, and just having this entire conversation has just been eye-opening on a lot of different, thought processes. And, one of the last things that I'll say is, how would you like people that approach your practice? How do you want them to feel after they leave your practice?
Oh, I want them to feel, most important thing is I want them to know that I care and I'm treating them individually. They're not a number. They're not just going through on a factory belt, that I'm taking care of whatever they're telling. I'm listening to them, and I'm operating on them, and I'm doing what I think is best for them that I would do for one of my friends or my family. I think we're pretty good where people feel like that. They get that feeling.
Absolutely. And, for your practice, do you do walk-ins? Do you do how do you set that up?
I mean, it's usually by appointment, but I've had patients that have just walked in and we take them, I don't turn anybody away.
Okay. And so
except all insurances. And that's one of the things also, because a lot of doctors will try not to accept some insurances. No fault to them, because like I said, the insurance game is they really hustle. They really hustle
everything.
hard.
Car insurance especially.
Everything, and they're the ones winning, right? Where everybody else is losing. But I still accept all the insurances, and I just love to take care of the patients.
No, absolutely. And so if people wanted to, get in touch with you, maybe this is the conversation they needed to take the step forward, and they wanted to make an appointment, where could they find everything at?
So we have a location in Plantation. We have a location in Davie. It's called the Center for Advanced Robotic and Endoscopic Surgery, CARES, CARES. The website is www.cares-fl.com. Okay. And the office number is 754 247-2684. That's I
We'll
don't
confirm it
I
and
don't
put it
yeah,
on the
yeah,
screen.
confirm it after. I don't usually call the office, but yeah, so that and always available. Like I said, I have myself, Dr. Donkor, and I have my partners, Dr. Caposoli and Dr. Moore. And we have great people in the office. Also, one of the things I wanted to touch on was, and I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but we really need to get more young Black people into medicine, going into medical school, going into surgery. It really makes a big difference, and I'm hoping people will see this and be interested.
No, absolutely. That this would interest me in having this kind of story, because even when you say, back in my younger days, like, man, you don't even look like you're older than 32 years old,
My man, my
Yeah.
man.
And
No,
so
I'm definitely
hearing
older
that.
than that, but I like to stay young. I listen to of course I listen to my old school stuff, but I listen to young music too, and yeah, I always tell people, I'm very grateful I went the medical route. Um, are you going to be making tens of millions of dollars? No, it's not an MBA contract, but you'll do really well. You'll be successful, and you'll be able to know that you are helping people.
Absolutely.
I think down here in South Florida, like it's we just driving down here, I saw two Lambos and a G-Wagon and a Tesla truck, right? And so you look around and you think everybody's getting money, everybody's doing this and doing that, and you got to be careful, because you might feel like you need to do that. You feel like you're not winning, like you need to catch up. But everybody has to just move at their own pace.
Got to.
Right? So you don't have to really you don't have to worry about what you see, next to you on the road, or you just focus on what you're doing. When I went to medical school, I was 15 years of training, not making any money. I couldn't afford to buy a girl a drink at the bar. I couldn't afford to buy any new clothes. I remember when I got my first loan to go to medical school, the first thing I did was I bought a stereo system, and I bought wheels, and I put the rims on a Toyota Corolla. So the stereo system was like $2,000, and the rims, because I got $100,000 line of credit to pay for medical school books and all that stuff. The first thing I did, I gave 10 stacks to my brother so he can do some stuff back home, help him out. Then I bought the rims, and I bought the stereo system, like 3 bands. The car was only worth like $1,200, $1,800, whatever it was.
Yeah.
That time I was in New York. I drove down here, Miami. And I was living, was in Miami? I was in Broward, but I was here, like, wherever. I was here for a week. I came out, the car was on blocks. Stereo gone, wheels gone.
They chop shopped it?
Whew. I'd never seen anything like that, but they didn't do that in New York like that.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like that. And I just spent that money.
Damn.
Gone. So that was a good lesson, because why was I doing that? I was in medical school. I just got it wasn't even my money, it was loan money. At like 4.5%.
Damn.
And I even had a rap about it. Loan money, not my own money, grown money,
Yeah.
But but that's that's how you think when you're younger, and you're focusing on the car and the girls and this and that type of that stuff. You're playing a long game. Right, it's a marathon. It's not a race.
Hey, it's your boy Big SK, man, the big step in the building. Anytime I throw in that drip, I come correct. This episode is coming to you by Billboard Bag. Become a walking billboard.
No, absolutely. Just being able to lock in, man. I've done some pretty wild things myself, and
Yeah,
it's always crazy to look back at it and just be like, man, I don't even know what's gonna happen with stuff like that. And so, that made me think of something else, though, where we have, it's one thing to want us to get into more, diverse positions that we don't necessarily, that we're not in to begin with. But where do you think the shift needs to happen overall as a community? Because I'm a stats guy. So when I was in school, it was majority psychology. So SSA.gov, this is a fact, you can go look it up. As of September 2023, the demographic that makes the least amount of money, which is not a surprise, is us. But the average Black male makes $41,600 in the United States. And so when you have a demographic like that, that's not even tied to like a job title or anything like that, how do we up the threshold? The highest one is Asian with 70,000, I believe.
Yeah, I saw those numbers. So you said you're a stats guy. So I think, in this, it's very important to talk. You can't just say, well, one group of people are making the least amount of money, one group of people are making the most amount of money, right? Because if you're a lot of like immigration, right? Of course, there's a lot of illegal immigration, but there's a lot of immigration of people that come here that have a very strong foundation.
Yeah.
They come here with money, they invest, they have a strong family network of people that have already been here, have money, they're able to help them get themselves a building. That's actually the story of the guy who owns, I don't know if it's a Super 8 motel or one of those motels, an Indian guy. And but they all help reinvest, but they have that foundation. Black people in this country, African Americans, don't have that, right? So if you look at the net worth of the average family, right, in this country, and you go look at white versus black, it's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at the difference in the value or the amount, is closely related to home ownership and the fact that blacks weren't even able to get you weren't able to get a mortgage. Then if you did get a mortgage, it was a predatory lending, right? Then the area where you lived was devalued, right? It was redlined. And then so you defaulted, then they bought it cheaper, and then the value went up, right? So the value of a house back then and the appreciation of that house is pretty much the difference in net worth. So I don't think black people are doing that bad. I think, are we on the bottom? Yes. We spend too much money and we don't spend enough in our own communities. Right?
Very true.
So in the Jewish community, Asian community, $1 will circulate 15 to 20 times before it leaves the community. Us, it's less than $1. It's fractional.
They said ours leaves in like 6 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, it's fractional. So if someone has $1, less than $1 is still within the community.
Wow.
Right? And so, but how do you find black businesses? I'm very adamant about spending money with black business. So, I find ways to do it, but it's very hard. We're underfunded. We're underbanked. So there's a lot of black business. It's just not on the books.
Yeah.
Right. You go to your auntie house and she cooks up plates. You give her a little bit of money. You take plate home for the family. Right. We always were doing things. If my daughter gets the braids done. Right. Well, the lady does the braids.
That's a pair on the side. Yeah.
That's a black business. Right. The reason why we don't have a storefront is we don't get the funding. We don't get, right. When COVID came and they were giving out, we didn't get funding. We didn't get the the PPE dollars, right? Hurricane Sandy came. We didn't get a chance to take advantage of the people that were displaced from that and get a different house and all that type of stuff. So yes, we have to do better. We got to stop buying and spending money elsewhere. We need to spend money with ourselves. We need to focus on home ownership. We need to invest in each other and with each other. And then I'll say that we need to I think education is important more now. Do you need education to be successful and rich? No. To be financially successful? No. But education will give you that it's just solid to have an education to be able to fall back on.
Yeah. And realistically, I tell people all the time, and I do coaching and stuff. I straight up tell people, and they don't want to hear it. I'm like, hey man, entrepreneurship is not for you. It's not for a lot of people. I
think a lot of people need to hear that.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to say it.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to believe it. It's very hard. I'm 46 now. I was like 42 before I even owned my own business.
Wow.
So I worked for someone my whole life, but I needed that stepping stone until I was able to be able to be foundationally strong enough until I was able to go and open up my own business. Right. And then I have a business that is always going to be around. It's very hard. I don't know how I know so many of my friends that are setting up this business, setting up that. I don't know how they do it. Like,
it's rough.
You get a job, get a W-2, and then do it on the side. That's what I think. But I have
that's what I tell people now. Like, hey, don't quit your
don't
9 to
quit
5.
Don't quit your 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Why you put yourself in it? So now you're trying to make money
Mhm.
under a stressful situation.
Exactly.
Right? So I didn't do that. I kept working. I was building. I bought the place. I was setting myself up. I was getting my accounts ready. And then when I had everything laid out, I walked in and I said, yo, I'm done.
Mm.
And then they said, wait, can you stay longer? Wait, will you reconsider? I said, no, I'm good.
Mm.
And then I left. But I already had built everything up. So now I was ready to go. It was a good transition.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is the way that you actually do it, because I did not do it that way.
No, and listen, I respect that, because sometimes you have to just put your head down and go. You got to jump off the porch.
Yeah.
But it's hard. I don't know if I could. I don't think I could have done it like that, especially with a wife and kids and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. You know, Doc, this was a insightful conversation. You know, thanks for just allowing us to come into your realm of expertise, your world. And again, if people wanted to follow you on social media or follow your business on social media, where could they do that?
So you can follow me at Donkor MD, at Donkor MD. You can follow me there. I post a lot. If you are a light at heart, and you don't want to see a lot of crazy stuff, I post a lot of surgeries on there. I post medical facts and tidbits and stuff like that, and then basic family stuff. But yeah, you can follow me there.
Absolutely, man. We appreciate you coming on this episode of Attractive Mindset. Make sure you guys share this with somebody. They need to hear this conversation. We talked a lot about, the community. We talked a lot about insurance, healthcare, working on yourself, being good for yourself, your body, how to process these things. And man, if you enjoy this conversation, make sure you like, share, subscribe. It's your host, Moneybag Rich. And as we always say, we look good, we live good. Life is good. Talk to us. We talk back, and we out.